Don't use the link. Don't use that link. Just log in separately.
I don't know how to log in separately. I need a link to use.
Go to. You have the app, right? Go to join on the app.
What's the app?
Look for the app there. The African conference. The word free conference. Blah blah blah. Click on join.
I don't have it on my phone.
Okay, then that might be the problem.
Okay, wait, here we go. But yeah, I don't want to stress you though. What else were you doing?
I was just trying to quickly.
You have 30 seconds to answer.
That was not a hard question. It's B.
How do you know C?
No.
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. The correct answer was C, a planetary alignment.
Hey, I understand that one. Oh, wait, you did this? Oh, that's a great question. I can just hear the answer sometimes. We do so good on a game show. Well, I think it all depends on the game show, Alvin, but yeah, I think we'd be pretty good. We should do it. Wait, just what? What do you think? Be on a game show. Alvin, that's not how it works. You don't just get on a game show because you like to. Oh, yeah? Just watch it. Hello, Battle of the Well, for your information, it's a very popular foreign game show, and they want to meet with us. Look, if this is another jump club, they ordered us a car to keep us in their studio. So, each of us has a mascot and head, and the mascots are always different, but always fun. Well, excuse me, but what does an alien, a bear, and a phone represent? It's random. You know, we like to keep the audience guessing. What's nice? What's going on? Get it? It's fun. That's what this show is about. It's fun.
You'll be asked a series of questions, and every time you answer incorrectly, your mascot will perform stunts that are out of this world.
Just fun off the way? Here, this will be fun. Let me give you a quick sample. Okay, so, pick your category. Food. Okay, so, how many grams of protein are there?
All right, thank you, everyone. It's so good to see you all, and I'm really, really excited. It is, I want to be sure if everyone can see me. Okay, sounds like it. So thank you very much. While we await other members and every other person to join us, we'll just proceed by going to the next item. Thank you very much, Ms. Blossom. Once again, I'll just give my opening speech, and I'll hand it over back to you again to run the show. She's the moderator for today's session, and we are looking forward to a very, very productive session. And also, just before I proceed, just to let you know that the speech for today will be available on our website, just in case you missed it or you want to maybe go get some information from it. The speech will be available, and also every part of this event today will also be available on our website and all social media platforms for you to go stream and you can watch after. So thank you very much. My good people of Africa, I greet you all. Okay, my good people of Africa, I greet you all. I welcome you, and it is my honor and with joy that I welcome you to the inaugural conference of the One Africa Forum. Today, we are forging a new way forward. We are owning up to the responsibility that Africa's unity, development, and independence is only achievable through the collective effort of each and every one of us. I believe that after this conference, we'll be intolerant to corruption, injustice, and every system that undermines the dignity, peace, and freedom of your fellow African, anywhere in Africa and even in the world. I'm optimistic that today's meeting will make you and make us more humane to the person next to you and your African brothers and sisters. I'm particularly interested in the future of this generation and the hope that we give to the generation coming after us. This is why One African Forum launched a campaign to raise and become Africa's young, dynamic, determined, and daring generation. This is our next decade campaign. We are raising a generation that is dynamic in their approach to bringing the positive change that we desire in Africa. A generation that is determined to develop Africa and Africans. We are also raising a generation that is daring in the face of corruption and all forms of anomalism on the path to greatness. My people, let me reiterate that we will no longer allow the survival of Africans to become the problem of Africa. The time to act is now. As we plan this program, our team reached out to different, equally important members of our society across the continent and even those in diaspora, men and women. Unfortunately, many of those we reached out to were already preoccupied for today, and some of them were still yet to get back to us, even as of now, and as at the time of finalizing the plan for the conference. Let me emphasize here that we believe in gender equality, and our team is working to bring the balance in these events and future events. It is rather unfortunate that most of the people who got back to us before we finalized the event are men. That does not mean that we undermine or we do not understand the place of women in our society. We really appreciate them, and as we have been engaging with many of them, we have agreed that subsequently we'll be having one-on-one sessions with them as it suits their schedules and as it also falls in the calendar of the One Africa Forum. So please, I would love you to stay in the loop and stay in the know. In October 2020, we launched a crowd fundraiser to raise $100,000 before the end of February 2021 to enable us provide urgent reliefs to victims of injustice, war, instability, and also provide support to the poor in all African countries and our African communities. The link to donate towards this cause is on our website at www.oneafricanforum.org. www.oneafricanforum.org. This is one of the steps we have taken to bring aid to our communities. Finally, my brothers and sisters, as we go into this conference, I charge you to be diligent, constructive, practical, engaging, and dynamic. Let us take action on the practical steps that our speakers will give during this lecture. Because we are not a movement of talkers. We are a generation of action. I also implore you all to work together with the One African Forum in your country and in your region Follow One African Forum on all social media platforms as One Africa Forum. And also join our Telegram group where we can all engage and discuss important matters that concern Africans and also Africa. As the Y3D generation, I commission you to be the messenger of unity in Africa, because this is the first step to achieving greatness and great things in Africa. No matter where we are, no matter whom we are, one thing I am certain of is, at the end of the day, our children will speak one language. Thank you all. God bless you. I remain your fellow comrade, Ambassador Edosiri Prince Irahon, Mr. Ancient. Thank you all very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prince. Those were actually very great words. I would like to start with a Swahili proverb that says, unity is strength and division is weakness. And that's why we're all here. Introducing our first speaker for today, Mr. Emmanuel Isaac. The topic is curbing electoral multi-practices in Africa. Thank you so much, sir. The platform is yours.
Recording has started.
Emmanuel, can you? Okay. Yes. You may please speak now.
Hello, everybody. This is Emmanuel from Images. I just want to be sure that everyone can hear me. If you can send a message in the chat saying you can hear me, and then I'll take it up from there. Can you all hear me? Just send a message in the chat. You can hear me. Okay, like I said, I'm MD of Image Promotion, a digital transformation company based in South Africa, Johannesburg. The whole aim of our organizations to transform Africa through digital innovations. And one of the things that we aim to do is to automate processes, African processes. A couple of when we can sit at home and renew license and renew our TV license, or sit at home, we renew our car license. We will sit in long queues, especially in Africa, for success. And one of the organizations to automate African processes to ensure that
Sorry, sir, your network is breaking. We're struggling to hear you. Okay. He's having problem with network issues, so we may just let's just permit him for a while. Okay. He's back on.
Okay, sorry, I think there was an internet issue, and that's one of the things we aim to do, image promotion. All right, I've been asked to speak on curbing electoral practices in Africa, and especially young Africans like us. And first and foremost, I want to appreciate Asian and the entire on Africa and inviting the speakers conference as much as possible to say that lead the whole essence of this sport to this completely difficult. We are
So your connection is very breaking as well.
Alright, so I'll be speaking on electoral in Africa. And I'm Nigerian based in Africa. I believe to explain some of that. Let me log in another device. Let me
Please.
log in another device. Okay. Okay, trying to link my phone.
Mr. Isaac, I think we have to just cut you short there for a moment until you actually find a way to fix your network. That was actually a very interesting topic that he was about to inform us on. We have to probably move to the next speaker. My leader, Mr. Prince, would you actually allow me to do so?
Yeah, just carry on.
Okay. I don't know, I'm so in love with quotes, so I'm going to read another one before we move on to the next esteemed speaker. The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. As Africans, we seem to always give up on the first try. But here, Nelson Mandela is telling us that we should always rise up every time we fall. Africa, arise. Our next speaker will be forgive me for the pronunciation.
I think Emmanuel Isaac is back. Emmanuel Isaac is back. Emmanuel Isaac is back.
Oh, Brother Isaac is back. Okay, then we should actually go back to him then. Mr. Isaac, the floor is all yours.
Emmanuel Isaac's there. Emmanuel Isaac, can you hear us?
Mr. Isaac, can you hear us? Are you all sorted out? I just want to let everybody on the platform to actually feel very comfortable commenting on the chat session. Just let us know what you think about this whole program. Just share with us what's on your mind, what ideas you have. Let the chat session be very productive, very informative. Thank you.
Is everyone muted? Brahman Isaac, can you hear us? If you can't hear us, Blossom, we might just have to, in the meantime, move to the next discussion. We might just have to do that. But let's be sure. Let's be sure for now. If he's
going to our next guest. The topic is, sir, forgive me. Okay. Introducing our next guest, Yamkela Dyantyi. Sir, are you with us? Mr. Yamkela, are you with us? Can you hear me? Mr. Yamkela, are you with us? Can everybody just, let's have an open discussion, right? The topic is, should Africa use one curriculum for basic education? So this is open to everybody that's on the platform that wants to speak up, that has any input. Mr. Prince, would you like to start?
I think we should, the one in charge of the session, let's open it and allow Roberta to lead the session for now. And then when Emmanuel Isaac is ready, he will inform us, and we can all go back and hear from Emmanuel Isaac. So for now, we are open, and Roberta will just lead that session. We can all unmute at any time. Hello, sir.
I think I'm back now. I had to switch from a device to another. My apologies for the connection issue. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you all hear me? Let me see thumbs up if you can all hear me.
You just
all right, beautiful. Is it better now?
Yeah, it's coming intermittently, but we can hear you.
Okay, let me just run through the speech, and then I will speak as short as possible because of time. All right, basically, speaking on stopping electoral malpractices in Africa is something that I would appreciate if other people are muted so that there are no distractions.
All right, we're working on that now.
Okay, beautiful.
You may proceed, sir. You may proceed.
All right, beautiful. So basically, we're talking about malpractices, electoral malpractices. Okay. Can you all hear me? Thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay, beautiful. So I'm speaking about electoral malpractices in Africa. It's something that has really eaten into the core of our communities. Speaking as a Nigerian based in South Africa, I've seen this play in Nigeria, and I've read about it being played in playing out in other parts of Africa, and you can also see them happen in South Africa. And it's something that concerns me a lot because these things can be dealt with. They are not fixed. They are just things that we can actually deal with electoral malpractices in Africa. Now, we must first and foremost understand that Africa is not a dark nation. Africa is said to be a dark nation, but it actually is not a dark nation. There is no continent in the world presently that is as blessed or as blessed as Africa is. Africa still remains the richest continent in Africa. However, that does not play out in our reality. Our reality is a greater part of Africa, a greater percentage of African countries are still poor and viewed as a third world nation. And this should not be. So there's a disparity between where we are and where we should be, because you can't have all the resources as a continent. We can't have all the resources that we have, both human and natural resources that we have. We've got the best weather in the world. We've got some of the best gold, some of the best oil in the world, and we've got so much resources, and yet we're considered poor. You know, so there is a disparity in terms of that reality. And one of the things we aim to do, I believe this conference aims to do, is to begin to change our orientation, to begin to see ourselves not as a poor nation or as a third world nation, but as Africa. And this is not Nigeria, this is not South Africa, this is Africa. All right. So when you begin to measure what's happening in Africa with what's obtainable in other parts of the world, one thing you realize is our problem is not poverty. All right. We're not in lack. All right. Our problem is leadership. The biggest problem facing African nations is leadership. And it feels to me, and this is, I strongly believe, that we have the wrong people leading Africa. All right? We have wrong people in offices leading Africa. And first and foremost, I would like to say that the leaders that we have presently are a function of our choices. All right? The leaders that we have are functions of our choices. Some of us in the past have made wrong choices. Some of us in the past, we've made terrible choices, and this is what has led us to where we are at presently, because we are a reflection of the leaders that we chose. We are, as a continent, we are a reflections of the leaders that we chose, and we're presently choosing. All right. So for us to begin to change the landscape of what's happening in Africa right now, the first thing we need to begin to do is change our leaders. And how do we change our leaders? Is for us to begin to look into our electoral processes and begin to make certain changes. All right. For us to be able to change Africa, we need to change our leaders. And for us to change our leaders, we need to change our electoral processes. I need us to understand these processes. First, as a continent, we need change. And for us to effect this change, we need to change those that are in the M of affairs. And for us to be able to change those that are in the M of affairs, we need to change our electoral processes. All right, do we all understand? Let me have a thumbs up if you understand what I'm saying. All right, so basically, in changing our electoral processes, which I'll be speaking basically on, you would understand, first and foremost, I want us to take note of this. The people that are leading us control the electoral processes. All right? In the whole of Africa, most of our electoral bodies, they call them independent electoral bodies. But the question is, are they actually independent of the government? Right? Bear in mind that the INEC or whatever electoral body is in any part of Africa that we're at, let us bear in mind that these bodies are funded specifically by the government. All right? And it is the person paying the bill that owns the project. All right? It is the person footing the bill that runs the show. As long as the body responsible for electoral processes in the nations in Africa are still being funded by the government, they would definitely be influenced by the government. So, a few things that I want us to take note of. The person funding the project runs the show. So the first thing we need to do to begin to curb electoral practices in Africa is to change who runs the show by changing the funding system for our electoral bodies, right? That's number one. Secondly, it feels like politics or service, let me not say politics, let me use service. Public service has been monetized in the greater part of Africa. All right, many people are called to serve only serve their own pockets. People called to serve only serve their own pockets. And as long as this continue, we would always be poor. Because when you elect a leader, a governor, a mayor, a president into office, and he is not called to serve the people or does not have the desire or the longing to serve the people of Africa, then they begin to serve their own personal pockets. All right? And this is what we've seen play out year after year, election after election. We choose people who serve their own pocket. And so I believe one of the major change we need to do is to take out money from politics. All right? For us to strip politics of money if they don't have access to funds. One of the reasons why a lot of people go into politics is because in Africa is because it's an easy way to make money. One of the easiest ways to get rich in Nigeria, for example, is to get into politics. That's why you have people who do not have qualification, people who have not led industries, try to lead the nation, people who have not even managed to lead a group of people. They've never led an organization. They go into politics because it's an easy way out, it's an easy way to wealth. All right, so we have people leading communities in Africa, in Nigeria, in South Africa, who do not qualify to lead these communities. But because it's an easy way to make money, they find their way into office. All right, so until we change that trajectory, we'll have people leading us who do not qualify to lead us. If you look at the leaders that we have in Africa, one question that should come to mind right now is this the best that we can do? Are our leaders the best that we have to offer the world? Is the president of South Africa, the president of Ghana, the president of Mozambique, the president of Nigeria, is that the best Africa can do? If you line up all the presidents in Africa and ask yourself, do these people really qualify to lead us? Now, most of the people who are leading us in Africa got there by playing the game of politics, right? And one of the reasons why they get so engrossed in that game is because they know they're going to make money off that game. So we have people running us who are there to make money. So the purpose of leadership is being defeated. Most people are leading us not because they want to make things better for Africa, but because they want to make things better for their own purses. All right? So that is why you have people in leadership who use funds meant for millions of people. They store it in their own accounts. All right? And that is why Africa is behind. You know, and as young Africans, we need to begin to take a stand and begin to change the trajectory of how things are done in Africa. All right? Now, so first and foremost, we have people who are in service that do not have the people in mind. Remember, the word service means to serve. All right? And the greatest form of leadership is servant leadership. Right? So if we indeed have leaders and they're not serving, then they're not qualified to be called leaders. Number three, we do not demand, and this has been playing out generation after generation in Africa, we do not demand accountability from our leaders. Right? Now, the reason why, for example, Nigeria, the economy in Nigeria has deteriorated to where it is presently is because year after year, government after government, president after president, leadership after leadership, the same thing happens and nobody is asking questions. Right? Before people are chosen, let me put it this way. This is the analogy. Do you know in, for example, Nigeria right now, it is the political parties that determine who rules. It is the political parties. And this happens everywhere in Africa, not the people.
it is the political party. Let me give you an example. So what happens is PDP, for example, they put up a candidate. What's the other one? The Tinubu people, they put up a candidate. So now we have two candidates, and we have to settle for the best out of the worst. Do you understand? So we're not settling for the best out of the best. We're settling for the best out of the worst because we've been given two bad options. All right? So most times, it is the political party that choose our leaders, not us. It is because they control the electoral processes. Remember, it is who controls the electoral processes that runs the show. It is the person funding the electoral processes that run the show. The reason why our quote and unquote independent electoral bodies are influenced is because they are being funded by the government. All right? Until we take our electoral bodies to a point where they are self-funded or funded by the nation and not the government, then we are not going to have the kind of leaders or leadership that we deserve as Africa. All right? So first and foremost is the person that controls the, that funds the project, that runs the show. Secondly, we're given, that is not the best that we can do. The leaders that we have presently in Africa are not the best that we can do. So what we see play out in our economic, in our communities, in our everyday life as African is a function of some of the choices that we made because we voted these people in. And I would not want to blame some of us. It's the options that we're given. A lot of times we're choosing from crappy options. Pardon me for using that word. We're choosing from crappy options. We're not given the best that Africa has to offer. We have Nigerians in government in different parts of the world, right? And they're doing very well, but we're not offered those options. We're giving old people, people who have ruined the nation, people who have siphoned funds, criminals. People go to jail, people are jailed for corruption, and they are recycled and thrown at us as leaders. Some of the leaders that we have today are criminals. They are murderers. And for us to have a change in Africa, we need to change our crop of leaders. And for us to be able to change those leaders, we must take back our electoral processes, change our electoral processes. And it starts with you and I. This change begins, if you expect, for example, you expect one of those people in power to effect this change, it is never going to happen. Because these people enrich themselves by enslaving us. All right? So what do we need to do as Africans? How do we change the status quo? How do we change this trajectory that does not benefit us? What do we need to do as Africans? Number one of the problems we have as Africa is we do not have databases. Nigeria, for example, cannot account for Nigerians. A nation that does not know its citizens cannot serve its citizens. A nation that does not know, cannot account for every citizen, does not know its citizens, and cannot serve citizens. There are countries, and that's why right now, I don't want to mention names, that can account for every single citizen. A white Chinese person can go into Nigeria today and get a Nigerian passport and automatically become a Nigerian citizen. Why? Because we don't have a database. The question is, I'm a Nigerian, I'm from Delta State. Is so not, right? Question is, the person in charge of my community, does he know I even exist? we do not have a database. There are Nigerians that do not know they are Nigerians. There are Nigerians that know they are Nigerians. However, the Nigerian leaders don't know they exist. And that is why people can protest and they're killed, and nobody knows who killed and what happened to while there's no database. So the first thing we need to do, right, is to have a database of Africans. Nigeria have a database. Every Nigerian, South Africa have a database. Some nations in Africa are trying with the database they need, but a lot of nations in Africa, they are way behind of database creation. All right. So for some African nations, we need to get to a point where we top the database for our country.
Wow. It seems like Mr. Isaac is still having his network issues. But so far, I actually his session was so informative. I have a couple of questions in my inboxes, but then we have to wait until Mr. Isaac actually joins us back through.
I'm back now. Okay, let me just begin to bring closure to my talk because of the other speakers and because of other things we need to get to today. We need to begin to effect change in Africa. For us to do that, we need to begin to change our leaders. For us to change our leaders, we need to change our electoral processes. All right? For us to change our electoral processes, we need to make them truly independent of the government. Right? Now, how do we do that? Digitalization. Number one, do you know it is possible to run a database of Africans, a comprehensive database that talks about their age, where they live, what they do, a comprehensive database that is not in the hand of the government and that cannot be manipulated by the government. A lot of times we wait for governments who do not care about us to make changes for us. But I believe, I'm a developer, for example. It does not cost us anything to have a database. Let me give you an example. Facebook, for example, has a more comprehensive database of Nigerians. Facebook, for example, Twitter has a more comprehensive, all these social media platforms have a more comprehensive database of Nigerians, what they're doing, where they live, how they live, than the Nigerian government. And that is replicable in other parts of the world. So we can create a database that is truly independent of the government. Now, once you have a database, then you can begin to influence change through your database. Now, let me give you a scenario. Let's assume let me use South Africa. Let's assume there are 40 million South Africans that are eligible to vote based on the database that it's open and it's not influenced by the government. All right. Now, with that database, you can begin to ensure curb electoral malpractices. Meaning, every ballot paper can be paired digitally with the person who voted. All right? What I'm saying is, first and foremost, having had a database that is comprehensive, we're able to determine who is eligible to vote. Remember the last election in America, Trump was suing for votes of dead people, all right? That is predominantly happening in Africa. There are people who do not exist but are voting. there are people who are non-Africans that are voting. All right. So the reason why there are malpractices is because we do not have a database that checks whatever results that we have. A nation, for example, a nation that has 160 million people, let's assume 100 million people are eligible to vote. 100 million people are eligible to vote. How come when you tag or tally the results, you have 120 million people voting? Do you understand? So let's say, for example, South Africa, only 10,000 people can vote in South Africa. Or let's say only 1 million people can vote in South Africa. How come you have a situation where 12 million people are voting when only 10 million people are eligible to vote? This is what we have happening every time there's an election in Africa. People who are dead are voting. People who never existed are voting. There's something called ghost voters. They don't exist, but they vote. And this issue of carrying papers around does not work. I can tear a paper. You can tear a paper, canceling other people's vote. The system of, what's it called? The system of our electoral system presently is just not working for us. And we need to change it. Now, let me begin to close up. Number one, as Africans, we run the show. As Africans, you and I, we run this show. Until we understand that we own this power, this electoral power belongs to us, then we'll be taken for granted by politicians. So Africans, young Africans, let us wake up. Let us wake up. We're sleeping. And we're losing our countries. We're losing our nations. Why? Because we are sleeping. We need to take back our nation. The first thing we need to do is to understand that we run this show, not the government, not INEC, not the electoral bodies. We run the show. We determine who leads us, and we need to begin to take back this from the government. Finally, if we want our nations back, if we want to see Africa move forward, first thing we need to do is to begin to run this show independent of the government, independent of the electoral bodies. How do we do that? We have very smart Africans who can create database, manage database. So the people who manage databases in other parts of the world are Africans. We need to begin to run our database, manage.
Mr. Isaac? So members, don't be afraid, don't feel shy. Please type in your questions, your comments. This is not just a one-way kind of session. We're all here to learn. We're all here to give our own input. I can see here Joy is actually agreeing with what Mr. Isaac was saying. Thank you so much, Joy. Okay, he's back. Welcome back, sir.
All right. I think that's where I'm going to close. That's where I'm going to hinge the talk so that we can do other things. We need to take back our electoral processes. The only way to curb malpractices is to get rid of corrupt people. The reason why there are malpractices is because the system is corrupt. Put these things in the hand of things that not even human beings, machines. Machines should run our election. We're too corrupt. I, as a person, I mean, if, for example, Mr. Asian wants to become the president tomorrow, and I'm in charge of elections, and he says, Emmanuel, I'll give you $10 billion to win this election, I'll probably listen to him. I'll probably give him audience. Why? Because we're talking about money. So anyone can be corrupted. Those people at the end of our years did not start up being corrupted. Anyone can be corrupted. It's just a matter of profit. It's just a matter of right. Anyone can be corrupted. So take it out of the hands of people and digitalize the algorithm that can run elections. Basically, that's what we need to do. To curb electoral practices, digitalize everything. Let people be able, I should be able to log in with the election and see how many people are voting, where they are voting from, because it is digital. They should be able to publish authorities that this is how it's running, how many people vote, and they were able to measure it. Why? Because these are numbers. Numbers don't lie. Machines don't lie. But until we digitalize these things, my system brothers, they're going to keep playing off a fool. And we're no fools. All right. Any question? Let me end there. Any question?
So much, Mr. Isaac, for a very profound session. What I got, the last statement that just touched me, it said, as Africans, we can run the show. Leading the question and answer session, I have a few questions that just dropped by in my inbox. I'm just going to read them and then you answer all three as we wait for the others to ask their questions. As Africa, at what point, is Africa at a point where it can move its electoral process to an online system? Number two, would an online system for electoral processes help curb the malpractices in that we would be able to get raw data from the voters as they vote? The third question, should government put out tenders to run electoral practices? Mr. Isaac, did you get all three? Mr. Emmanuel? I think we lost him again. Oh, here he is. This is the change that we need to bring in Africa, where our connections are very good. Mr. Emmanuel, can you hear me? How profound was this session? Mr. Asian, would you actually permit me to unmute everyone, probably get a few comments? Let us engage with our participants. Is that possible, sir? Can everybody hear me? I have a few comments here. Thank you so much. Ayo. Ayo says, even in the US, it will appear. He also comments and says, Africa must also be cautious of the fact that these incompetent leaders are in cahoots with Western organizations. Thank you so much, Ayo, for your comments. And he also says they claim to invest here, but what they do is control our leaders and control us, which is very true. Coming from a Congolese background, I'm Congolese, and what I hear, unfortunately I've never been home, but what I hear is that with the coltan that is found in Congo, so this natural resource is actually a primary resource that is used for smart and electronical devices. And it's actually very shocking that this country is living in poverty, but yet gets to produce such a powerful resource that is used all over the world. Why is it that we can't manufacture our own electrical device and sell it to the world? That's the question I have. That's the question in my thoughts. Why is Africans so selfish that they sell the natural resource for so little money?
What's up? Exactly. So I didn't get a number.
Mr. Asian, I actually saw your mouth moving. I don't know if you...
All right, you didn't. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly, sir.
That's fine. I was saying that it's open for everyone. We can all come in with our comments and contributions now, following the lecture by Brian and Isaac. Also, I really do agree a lot with what Ayo Moses said. I really do agree a lot. You know, these people come in disguise as investors, and actually they create a problem. That's the first thing. I mean, we've discussed this in our leadership meetings before, time and again. These guys come, they create a problem, and then they come and profile a possible solution, and then the negotiation is well, they're going to solve this problem for this period of time, but they're sucking resources for decades and of decades for themselves. So we also need to be smart. We also need to also be cautious as well. Looking at what we're talking about in our leaders now. These leaders, they're in partnership it's like a gentleman's club. They're in partnership with this Western uh, hungry set of people. And by hungry, I don't mean like they're starving. They're just greedy. You know, our leaders are in partnership with them. Some may know, some may not, some may not know, but they are being used by these Westerners to actually take from Africa. So we have to be careful. Hence what Brian Emmanuel Isaac said, we need to take back the electoral system. We need to take it back completely away from the government, away from the government. So please, I'll leave it out for everyone. I think Rebecca's hand is on there. Somebody's hand on there. Please, will you please recognize her?
Am I free to speak? Do I have the floor?
Yes, you do.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Ravitha Pasha from South Africa. I think this has been a very interesting topic that we've been discussing. I just also wonder, I mean, the question about whether or not Africa is at a place where we can take everything digital. Because I heard our brother Emmanuel Isaac, so that question was for me. I heard him busy telling us, Mr. Emmanuel Isaac, about if everything went digital, it will solve a lot of problems. And I definitely agree with that. But do we have the infrastructure in Africa to move everything to a digital platform as it is right now? I think, I mean, if I look at just South Africa, for example, and I think about rural areas in South Africa, I begin to think about, I mean, we're still struggling, for example, just to get proper connectivity to people in Africa. I mean, in the rural areas within Africa. So I do wonder whether or not we are at a place as Africans where we can move our electoral processes to a digital platform, you know. Won't people start having connectivity issues, for example? Won't one person say, well, I'm here in the rurals of rurals, I don't even know I don't know how to use a phone, for example. I don't even know how to access the internet. So I do think that down at the root of the problem as well that we have is that people aren't educated enough to a point where they actually know how to use the internet, and also the infrastructure that we have does not provide the platform where people can actually go digital, you know, to vote and to use those processes. Although I do think that going digital will help us go a long way as Africa. And I'm sorry, Mr. Ancient, I'm going to pick on something that you said, and I'm going to just say that when you say that the leaders, they are wrong, whatever, I feel like we're going back to the place where we are passing the buck. We're going back to the place where you're saying, oh, the leaders are corrupt. We know the leaders are corrupt. There's no issue there. There's no contention there. It's something that we're aware of. The theme of this conference is now. What are we doing now to curb that corruption? What are we doing now to ensure that going forward as Africans, when we sit 10 years later, when we're raising our children 10, 15 years from now, we look back and we say, after the conference now, this is what we did to ensure that corruption is a thing of the past. This is what we did to ensure that when we speak about the problems, we're not just saying, it's the leaders who are at fault. So I think that more than discussing the problems that we have, I think we also need to discuss the solutions. What are we doing now going forward to make sure that we as Africans are moving forward and we have processes that really assist us? Thank you.
So much, Mrs. Rabetu. Thank you so much. The question is, what are we doing now? That's what Ms. Rabetu is asking us as Africans. After this program, what are we doing now? Before I introduce our next speaker.
Mr. Waters' hand is up, sorry.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Sir?
Yeah, Mr. Water?
Please unmute yourself.
muted.
Mr. Water, are you with us?
Can anybody else hear him?
No, I don't think he's speaking as well.
I think he was actually trying to speak. Mr. Walter, please unmute yourself.
Okay, is any other person's hand up? So let's move on.
For time's sake, I think we should actually move on to the next session. So we're actually moving on to our next discussion, and this is going to be on the education and the curriculum. So I'm just going to pass it over to my colleague, Ms. Rabetu. May you please take the stand, ma'am?
Hi, it's me again. So yeah, I mean, look, it's supposed to be an interactive session. So the floor is really open to everybody who is on the platform currently for us to discuss whether or not we think that at a place of basic education, as Africa, we need one curriculum. So it's something that I think we all need to pick our brains on, begin to think about that moving, like, is it going to be beneficial for us as Africa, or is it going to be detrimental to for us as Africa? So I do want to open the platform so that I can hear what your thoughts are, what your input is on whether or not you think that Africa should have one curriculum for basic education.
Are we all together?
Yes, we're here. So, I mean, maybe I'll just start with my thoughts on the topic. Maybe it'll help you gain some, some courage to discuss what you guys are thinking. So, I think, for example, 1 + 1 is 2, and math is math, right? Science is science. We can't necessarily change that. So, in terms of standardization and making sure that we have proper standards, I think it would be nice to challenge each other as Africans to see that whether or not we could set such a high standard for ourselves across the board for everybody to try and meet up with. I do think, however, that what may appear to be problematic, or the issues that we might face with that, is that not every country on the continent is at the same place in terms of their education. So, for example, even within a country, if you look at a country, there's such huge gaps in terms of people who live in urban areas and people who live in rural areas in terms of the level of education that they receive. So I do think that in theory, it may be a good idea, but practically, first and foremost, what needs to happen is that countries in themselves need to be able to bridge that gap of difference. So, for example, I went to a nice-ish school here in South Africa, and obviously when you go to varsity university, which is obviously higher education, you begin to meet and socialize with different people who went to, you know, various schools, and you do begin to see and notice that not only does the kind of school that you go to build your confidence when you go to a university or when you go for higher education, but even in terms of how you begin to grasp concepts, you're not beginning from ground zero. So that foundation that you have is very important. So I think that one of the important things that we need to do before we standardize the curriculum is that how do we bridge the gap in Africa for the differences for those who are in rural areas and those who are in urban areas? Because that gap is huge, you know. And even when you go forward, for example, you think that you begin to see issues of funding, for example, that people who your marks will help you get proper funding, but obviously your marks will be a determination of the kind of school that you went to. So if you went to a rural school, for example, you'll have to work 10 times harder than everybody else to be able to get that funding, to be able to move forward. So yeah, I think for me, or my thoughts are that for us to be able to standardize the curriculum, we first have to work in countries individually to be able to bridge the gap, in the educational gap between those who go to rural schools and those who go to urban schools.
That's so true, Ms. Roberto. With me, I totally agree with us having the same curriculum, because as Africans, education actually plays a huge part in a person's life, regardless of who they are. And having that big difference of what we study at school in different parts of Africa actually makes us look at ourselves differently. For example, in history, here in South Africa, they don't really get taught on how Africans stood by them during the time of apartheid.
The struggle.
So with that, actually, because of not having the same curriculum in other countries, that is written in their history textbook, but in certain countries, that is not written in their history textbook. So one can actually love another brother simply because of the history that was taught to him, and the other can actually hate or dislike another brother simply because of the history that was taught to him. So as Africans, I feel like this is very important for us to actually make it happen. It has to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else that wants to speak in, feel free to drop your comments. This is actually a very big discussion and a very important discussion.
Yeah. I do think education is a very important topic to speak about, because the foundation of your education and the level of education in a country and in a continent determines how far that continent can actually go. And that's what people use to oppress us. I mean, for example, I know I have friends who've gone to study abroad who then come back and say that when they went abroad, they found it very difficult to adjust to the nature of things that are done there. But also what they did realize is that the standard of education is vastly different. And I mean, that's why, for example, you have in South Africa something called, I think it's SAQA, that's the abbreviation, it's the South African Qualifications Association, something like that, which verify your qualifications. And you find somebody who in their country, they come to South Africa with a university degree, or they come to South Africa with a matric, whatever it is, and by the time they're done at SAQA, they feel like actually they haven't even started with the education, because the difference is so vast. And that's similar to what you find in countries abroad as well, is that before you can even study the course, even if you have like your master's or you have your honors and you want to do your master's, before you can even proceed, you first have to do a bridging course. So yeah, I do think that standardization would be very important. And like I also said at the beginning, maths is maths. Solve for X will always be solve for X. It won't be the way you might solve for X may be different, but at the end of the day, if you're solving for X, whether you're in South Africa, Malawi, Mozambique, whether you're in the UK or the United States, if the question is the question, the answer, there's only one answer, at the end of the day. And the same, it's similar with science, for example. So I do think, there are some subjects that you put a standard that this is what you need to go for. And I also do think what often we overlook in Africa is early childhood development. We often think that no, as long as the child goes to grade 1, okay, they've gone to grade 1, as long as they finish primary school, as long as they finish high school, but we don't look at the foundational areas of their learning. And when you go abroad again, you find children who are 4 years old who are reading. What are our 4-year-olds doing right now in Africa? What are they out in the streets, they playing with each other, whereas when you go abroad, those 4-year-olds can count already, they can read. So I think also not just the basic education. I do think some attention also needs to be paid to early childhood development. I mean, in South Africa, I know, for example, you take a child to nursery school, they get to nursery school and maybe once or twice a book will be read to them, and then for the rest of their day they are sleeping or they're out in the jungle gym. Nursery school for them is a matter of, okay, I don't need to take care of my child right now. They're there somewhere else and I can work. But I do think that it's important that even as we are raising children and even as we are going to be raising our own children, we need to focus on their early childhood development. Yes, please.
Okay. I'll just quickly comment here, and this is all speaking of an Africa Forum. We have actually considered the issue of curriculum and the standardized education in One Africa Forum, and it is actually part of our 5 strategic plan in ensuring that we achieve our aims. We have not published these strategies out yet. Maybe in due course it will be available on our website. However, education is one of them. And what are we saying? Right now we have begun the research on how we can have a seemingly, I don't know, I'm trying to pick a proper word to say now, a comprehensive subject, a subject that comprehensively gives an approach to Africa and Africans on history and educating Africans about Africa and Africans. It's not going to entirely change the curriculum of Africa because that's a long shot away. Some people they have different things. So research has begun. We, in due course, will come up, and then there's this that we want to introduce to every government in Africa. We want to ensure that there must be singular subject taught across every country in Africa. I mean, singular subject, and it must be compulsory, as we have met in English compulsory in many schools. I want to say all schools in Africa. This will also be compulsory, where from, like Roberto said, from the early childhood education, from the basic form of education, these young ones are already being taught on the need to stand together as Africans and stand united as Africans. These ones are already being chicken together. As well as understanding the history. Am I on mute? Okay, as well as understanding the history of Africa. So we're going to start teaching this from the basic, from the crèche, from the early childhood education, from KG, from the kindergarten, depending on what part of Africa you're from. Teach it up to the high school level, you understand, and up to the secondary school level, and from there you can then decide whether you want to forward on it in the university, or it will still be available in the university. But we want to ensure that in the near future, Africa has a singular subject that teaches Africa about Africans and Africa, and Africans about Africa, and also a singular subject that educates us. So we are discussing curriculum now and discussing educational system and so on and so on. But one thing is important, is that we must improve the standard of education in Africa. one thing is important. One thing is actually not arguable, that we must work to see that the standard of education in Africa is not in any way lesser than it is anywhere in the world. If you check our different purposes, that's also available on our website, you'll see that we are trying to see how we can improve the education of Africa towards globalization. So we want to ensure, instead of importing educational system, we want to export Africa's educational system. You understand? We want to be able to export our best product outside of Africa. And that is because we must set a standard. No longer will we allow our children to be taught things that actually make them instigate hate against themselves. So as One Africa Forum, we're working on that and working on research. So I actually want to leave back the floor, give the floor back again to everyone, and let's hear. I just wanted to quickly drop that or everyone know that we are actually working on that as well. And yeah, we all need your support. We have a research team working on that, and we need more people in that research team as well, because we're talking about covering the entire continent. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can all hear you, sir.
All right, I'm not going to put on my video because I've been having a lot of network connection issues. My name is Yamkela, and I'm based in South Africa, in Pretoria. And thank you so much to my colleague there who was presenting on the issue of education. The standardization of education in Africa is definitely a unique phenomenon in two ways for me, in terms of the diverse and the unique culture of Africa, and then secondly, the economic growth and development of Africa as a whole. And the conference, like you rightfully said, is that we are focusing on the now. Once we start, there's been a lot of movements, there's been a lot of initiatives, there's been a lot of noise around trying to, fight against the current curriculum in South Africa especially, but also across the continent. And we understand how politics have been able to manipulate the policy. If you start fighting for the standardization of education in Africa today, that probably will be done in the next 10 years because of how the policies and systems are built in Africa as a whole. So with the approach of the now effect, I think it's important for us to, as the One Africa Forum and other organizations and other NGOs, to start pioneering, and of course universities, to start pioneering lectures related to futuristic economic growth for Africa, start pioneering lectures which educate on the unique and the diverse history and culture of Africa as a whole. This will allow us to penetrate grassroots of Africa, which are mostly rural areas of Africa. And penetration of grassroots of Africa gives us access to reach those people that don't have access to education, that are still, let me use the word, brainwashed by the big messages which leaders in politics are driving through media, whether it's the radio or TV. So if you want to really achieve a now movement, a now effect, we need to use ourselves as a forum. We need to use NGOs. We need to partner with universities and start executing and implementing lectures that speak and educate Africans at the grassroots level about the importance of futuristic thinking when it comes to economy, the importance of futuristic thinking when it comes to our natural resources. What does it mean when a big company moves into Africa and starts mining? You educate the community about those things and how it affects them economically, how it affects them in terms of jobs creation. You tell them the good and the bad. Once we are able to hit the grassroots level and able to penetrate the grassroots level, then we can also influence other ideas and ideologies. The first speaker was speaking about the issue of an electoral system. When you want to talk to a larger mass of Africa, you need to go down to grassroots levels. You need to go down to rural areas. And if we can use these platforms, NGO, universities, lecturers, to reach to grassroots levels, we can actually start talking to them about the issues that are more important, which are the issues of elections. How do you choose the people that are leading you? You know, so I think the issue of standardization of education is very important, and I think for me the approach to the now approach, we need to really implement these lecturers, because they will really open doors for us to implement the bigger vision, not just the issue of
Okay, thank you. We'll hand over to Sarah Betsa, so she can also continue.
Thank you so much, Yamkela, for that contribution. I think, yes, you make a good point about going into the grassroots, because many a times you forget that there's people in the rural that you need to focus on before you can actually make an impact. And we think about, the higher level things. So I think, yeah, that's a very important statement. And also when we look at the demographics of Africa, we see that actually most of the people that we have do find themselves in rural settings. And if we can affect change there as a starting point, I think then, we'll go far in terms of the change that we want to effect. A question that comes to mind, though, when we speak about changing universities, changing curriculums, is how do we actually go about making that influence and making that impact, such that when you go to a university, a well-established university such as UCT or Wits University, how do you get those people to actually change their curriculum or to alter their curriculum such that it's able to make it's able to have the desired effect that we want? Like, how do we actually go about changing that curriculum? I mean, you think about Wits, like it's from donkey years ago. It's, well-established UCT. Those are like some of the big universities that we have here. Like, how do we actually get those people to listen to us and make the change that we'd like to see?
So we don't want to do that, because it's not going to happen. So what we want to do is, we want to have access to their students, we want to have access to their lecturers and professors, to take them to these rural areas and take a synopsis of what's in the curriculum, because there are some good synopsises in the curriculum. They then be the ones that, through the NGOs, through the partnership of One Africa Forum, they are the ones, we partner with them and we drive this idea, this ideology, and they are the ones that are also co-pioneering the teachings at the grassroots level. Soon enough, once that happens, once that the momentum is gained, soon enough, because we are now part of them, it's easier for us to then have a meeting with the professor to say, Professor, that lecture which you had in Congo, in these deep rural areas, we would like to propose and table this as an agenda to say, if this could be taught in university, how will that impact Africa? Because when you want to approach them head on, it's going to be a difficult thing. I mean, this is not necessarily because of leadership, but because of the policies that they have set in place. It's difficult to change a policy of a university. So we need to be, as young people, we need to be innovative on how we approach things. The age of taking stones and breaking things is over. It's the age of innovation and creativity. It's the age of thought leadership. And that's what we need to cultivate, even with this kind of forum. So that for me will be the approach that I would appreciate that we take. We don't want to force things, but we want to influence things. We want to drive change through thought leadership influence. And yeah, I think that would be best.
Thank you so much for that feedback, and yeah, I definitely agree with the approach that you're proposing. Mr. Ancient, I heard you saying that as One Africa Forum, you're busy making notes about how you want to change the curriculum. I hope you've noted the feedback that you've just received from Yamkela, and I hope that even as you begin this change that you want to effect, that you take them into account. I also wanted to suggest that as One Africa Forum, as you are making these plans for the suggestions that you want to make of how you want to influence the curriculum, I want to suggest that don't leave us out, you know. The same way that you invited us all to this conference, you must also make it available for us to give our feedback and our input, so that at the end of the day, when you do have your position paper or your proposition, it's got feedback from various backgrounds and from various people. So, Mr. Walter, I see your hand is up. I don't know if it's up because from the previous session, or it's up because you want to say something right now.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's still up. I just wanted to contribute to what you guys said before. When we talk about the education curriculum and all, I've heard Mr. Yamkela talk about the approach and all of that, which is very valid. But again, I was also looking at the fact that the education system, we need to have NGOs, which some of you have mentioned, to come into it. Because if we're saying we want to change the curriculum or we want to start grassroots education, we're still going to go through the normal Ministry of Education, which is being funded or being regulated by the same government we are saying is incompetent or it's not corrupt, or it's corrupt rather. Because the truth is the governments of Africa, everywhere in Africa, they know the power of education. They know once the people are educated, then things will change. So that's why when you go to some places, taking Nigeria for example, when you go to the northern part of Nigeria, they deliberately do not take education down there because they know those people have larger number. They decide the electoral factor, and once you educate these people, once you give them that knowledge and education, things are going to change. So, like we said already, the NGOs, bodies like this One African Forum needs to intervene and start teaching these people, needs to start partnering with universities, basic education, basic schools, primary and secondary, and then we need to have another strategy to get across to these people. Because if we are going to say, oh, let's partner with the ministry or let's partner with the school, the government owns the school, regulates the ministry, and they know what we are coming to do, they are going to put obstacles and barriers, and we cannot get to these grassroots people, as we are saying. Digitalization has come, but in the grassroots, we do not have technologies, we do not have light, we do not have networks, so there's no way we can actually get to them. So a movement like this needs to go on a one-on-one conversation down in the grassroots. We need to meet these people. We need to start teaching them before we bring the change in the curriculum that we are talking about. We need to start teaching them first what we want to do, and before we start initiating the curriculum into whatever, because we won't have a larger voice, then our voice will be heard.
Can I say something?
Yes,
Sorry,
yes, pleasure. You can say.
My laptop screen was not showing that hand sign, so I couldn't pick up my hand. Please excuse me. So I think the one thing that we need to also have in our mind is that education is not a classroom agenda, right? When we speak about education, let's not only think in the confinements of the classroom structure. Education is very broad, and once maybe we have that thinking, we will better understand that we don't have much obstacles on our way. Well, Emmanuel just mentioned something that I mentioned earlier on, that the issue of these policies are there. These policies have been set in place. It takes time to change them. They've been built that way, so that it takes time to change them. And the people that have built them are resisting to move away from power. So we don't want to be those clowns that just go head on with these politicians. Like I said, we need to have a better approach. And that better approach, I use an example of lectures. I mean, right now, we're having a conference and we're in different countries. But if One Africa Forum in South Africa, the guys that are in South Africa, could group themselves and move into a deep rural area in the Eastern Cape and start speaking the issue of economic growth and local economic growth versus national economic growth. We've literally taken ourselves as we are the education, we are the resource, we've got the information. All we do is just transport ourselves to a rural area. Let's have a discussion with old people, with young people about the importance of economic growth from a local level all the way to a national level. So the education thing is not only a classroom agenda, it's very broad, it's very diverse, and we need to utilize that.
Thank you very much for that feedback and input. Yeah, I definitely, again, I agree with your sentiments that we need to also not just think about limiting it to the classroom and think beyond the conventional way of educating people. I saw Mr. Sahir Kenneth, your hand was up. I'm not sure if it's still up right now. If there's something that you would like to say, the floor's open to you right now. Maybe I said the name wrong. I'm not sure. Kenneth Kimbe. I don't know if there was something that you wanted to add.
Well, I was in. Sorry for coming late, but I was in before now. But due to the poor network, and I had to catch up with something, so I had to go offline and come again and join this conference. I want to extend my profound gratitude to various speakers, you and Mr. Prince, and I think Yamkela, because I'm just coming in. The issue of education or making a curriculum one as Africa is a thing that is very, very important. But when you look at education, it goes beyond the formal setting. That is to say, it goes beyond the classroom thing. You being educated, it goes beyond the classroom thing, as it encompasses, the word education encompasses other things like cultural, like things like cultural practice, and some other things. So I'm a supporter of that view that we should put our curriculum together as Africa. If at all we want to create that change we are yearning for as one Africa, we should. I'm a supporter of that view.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kenneth, for that feedback and input. In the interest of time, Mr. Ancient, I hope it will be okay for us to wrap up the conversation on education in Africa so that we can also deal with other topics. In summary, I think, we've had quite a fruitful discussion. We can't exhaust education in one sitting, of course. It's a very robust topic with different elements to it. So without wasting too much time, I'll just summarize it that, Mr. Ancient, don't forget to invite us when you're having the think tank on education. We've heard various aspects and various inputs from various people within the platform about how we can move education forward. And at this point, I'd like to give over to Blossom, who will continue with our program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ravetso. Thank you to Mr. Walter as well, Mr. Yamkela, and Mr. Kenneth for giving us your input on this discussion. Mr. Ancient as well, thank you. Moving on to our new speaker, we'll be actually discussing Sorry. Okay. The topic that we are about to introduce at the moment is economy of Africa and the real issue. And the person that will be discussing this and addressing this is Mr. Yamkela Dyantyi. Dyantyi.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you. Everyone is muted, but we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think I unmuted myself. Well, thank you very much for inviting me into this robust and innovative and determined forum. Definitely, it's something that I'm excited to be part of. My name is Yamkela, and my surname is Dyantyi. I am the founder and the director of the SME CEOs Group, which is an entity that focuses on small medium enterprise development in Africa. Our core focus is to help small businesses transit into the mainstream economy, therefore helping them run sustainable businesses and creating job creations in Africa as a whole. And to start my topic and my presentation, Africa has been a research playground for many research institutions, and ironically, the majority of those institutions are outside of Africa. The continent has also been a research playground for many government institutions, and again, ironically, a majority of those are from outside of Africa. Africa also has undergone several political and economic reforms, yet there is little development to show for its people. Africa by far is one of the richest continents favored with natural and mineral resources in the world, with Nigeria and South Africa accounting for almost half of sub-Saharan Africa's gross domestic product, but its people are amongst the poorest in the world. Sub-Saharan Africa is home to more than 1 billion people, half of whom will be under 25 older, will be under 25 years old by the year 2050, and still it is a leader in youth unemployment. The high-level challenge for me that I've observed with Africa is the issue of poverty and governance. That is the high-level challenge that I picked up when I did my research. And the high-level solution for Africa is a vibrant economy and a growth-driven policy and governance system. Now, the base of all this, the development of Africa cannot be achieved in isolation of strong leadership, political and governance system. And I think our first speaker really gave us a very good perspective of how the electoral system can help influence politics. And of course, we know that politics governs how a country is run. Right, what are Africa's biggest challenges? So what I've done is I've grouped them into two. Africa's biggest challenges, I've grouped them into two. The first one was a human-caused challenge, and the second one was an economic challenge. The human-caused challenge is the issue of leadership, corruption, and inequality. The economic challenges are infrastructure, relevant economic growth skills, relevant economic growth policies. Those, for me, are the 6 challenges which I think Africa needs to really focus on in order for us to win the challenge against poverty and the issue of governance. Now, then there is a need for an African leadership culture, which has long lacked in Africa, which has caused our leaders to behave the way they behave and lead the way they lead. So the African leadership culture, what is it? What does it consist of? Leadership skills required to guide the continent into development. We need to put leaders that have got leadership skills required to guide the continent into development. The cultivation of leaders with exceptional character and skills is critical to Africa's development. Alignment between the leader's vision and the people's needs is the need in Africa when it comes to leadership. Leadership culture and ideology. There is a distance between leaders and people which they lead. That gap is very wide apart. Leaders today are served instead of serving. The last point on leadership is leadership accountability. We need leaders that are result-driven leaders. These are the 5 points that I think we need to elect leaders based on. These are the if we don't have those leaders, these are the 5 points which we need to capacitate our young people. We need to capacitate them to have this kind of thinking, this kind of skills in order to become the African, in order to fit the African leadership culture. The issue of corruption. Capital flight and tax evasions are a biggest issue of Africa. Capital flight, tax evasions, and tax avoidance are significant developmental problems that require urgent attention in Africa. In the UN report, the UN found that Africa loses 89 billion a year to illicit capital flight. African countries lose an estimate of 88.6 billion each year, equivalent to 3.7 of the continent's economic output. In illicit capital flight, according to the UN Economic Development in Africa Report 2020, the report by the UN Conference on Trade and Development states that illicit capital flight could generate enough capital by 2030 to finance almost 50% of the 2.4 trillion needed by sub-Saharan Africa countries for much needed climate change, adaptation, and mitigation measures. Illicit capital flight and massive lost revenues from tax avoidance and evasions have been a long-running phenomenon and a major source of lost income for the African continent. So it's leadership, it's corruption, and we get to the last point of inequality. Inequality in its broad sense is access and equal opportunities regardless of age, gender, disability, race, ethnicity, origin, religion, and economic status. I'll start with the issue of gender. African women and girls are more likely to be poor and to lack the assets and opportunities needed to escape poverty. 1/3 of African companies have no female directors on their board, while 33.6% have only one. Women only comprise 23% of Africa's parliament, and I know that Mr. Ancient mentioned earlier on, and he actually apologized about the fact that we didn't have a lot of women represented in this discussion. So the idea of inequality when it comes to gender is a big issue in Africa. Well, it's a global issue, but we are in the context of Africa. We need to prioritize women to get to find positions or to fit into positions or to be recruited into a position of leadership. We need to fight, well, not fight, but we need to make sure that we implement strategies and systems that really try to bring about change for women in Africa as a whole. I do not want to get into philosophical ideas of the power of women, the importance of women, what they do, what they've done for Africa. but it's really important that we make sure that we bridge the gap. The other issue is the issue of land. Unequal land distribution is one of the oldest forms of wealth inequality in Africa. It is of huge importance in countries where a large number of citizens, especially poor citizens, rely on land. The third one is wealth inequality. Wealth inequality is also a big issue in Africa. The richest 0.001% own 40% of the continent's entire wealth, while the richest Africans see their wealth grow. Too many others struggle to earn a decent living from the labor. Today, there are 20 billionaires in Africa living alongside 413 million people in extreme poverty. South Africa is home to 5 of these billionaires as well as 50 millionaires. Nigeria is Africa's biggest economy, yet the fruits of its economic growth are not shared equally. Poverty and destitution are very high. Around 9 million children are out of school. A quarter of citizens lack access to safe drinking water, and half are living below the $1.90 poverty line. This is the shocking part. It is estimated that 24 billion will be needed to end poverty in the country of Nigeria, which is less than the combined wealth of the richest 5 Nigerians. The richest 5 Nigerians, 29.9 billion, is more than the country's, or was more than the country's entire 2017 budget. So we have the issue of leadership, not only in politics, but in businesses, people that are leading businesses in Africa. And I'm using the examples of South Africa and Nigeria. So the issue of leadership in Africa is not only in politics. It is also within the small businesses. It is also within big corporate. So when we drive these kind of discussions, we need not only to look at politics, but to look at the broader sphere which affects the growth of an economy. And then the other issue is the issue of infrastructure. Infrastructure remains a major obstacle towards Africa's achievement, growth. There is physical infrastructure, there's social infrastructure. The World Bank study on infrastructure found that electricity, water, roads, and information and communication technology reduces national economic growth by 2% points every year. And apparently it cuts business productivity by as far as 40%. So the issue of infrastructure is critical as we journey in the ideas of change. Africa's economic growth and development are directly linked to infrastructure development, but it is the push-pull relationship with commodities that has become the driving force for infrastructure development in the region. Large commodities finds like oil and gas in East and Southeast Africa, as well as the huge demand, particularly from Asia, for agriculture and natural resources, including minerals such as iron ore, platinum, coal, and copper, are driving the need for infrastructure. In turn, investment in infrastructure needed to extract and move these commodities to global markets. I'm making an example of rail and port infrastructure, continue to drive Africa's economic growth. So when we journey on this vision and idea and dealing with the issues of infrastructure, we need to, and when we speak about education also, we need to ensure that we prioritize education in infrastructure for young people to learn, to be equipped with skills, so that we do not have to source skills from outside, but we have skills within the continent where young people can be innovative on the subject of infrastructure development. One of Sub-Saharan Africa's top developmental challenges continues to be the shortage of physical infrastructure, greener economic activities, enhanced efficiency and increased competitiveness are hampered by inadequate transportation, communication, and water power and infrastructure. And then we move, that for me was just the stats that I wanted to kind of lay down on the table of what or where Africa is currently. And now there are new and emerging challenges in Africa, which we need to look at as young people. And one of them is the issue of biodiversity loss. There is a lot of biodiversity loss in Africa, and there needs to be drastic steps taken to make sure that we stop these losses from happening. Africa is home to a quarter of the internationally recognized biodiversity hotspots. Biological resources sustain the livelihoods of millions of people in Africa. For instance, 2/3 of the sub-Saharan Africa population relies on products from its forests, wild resources, and non-timber forest products. And these provide up to 35% of rural household income in places like Zimbabwe, and more than 50% in Senegal and other countries. Tourism is based largely on its ecosystems, wildlife, and landscapes, and both terrestrial and marine. And Kenya, some amount of about 7 million a year in foreign exchange. These earnings are derivable from biodiversity resources and are likely to cease if the threat is not dealt with. So the issue of biodiversity is a very important issue in Africa. And we need not only to be looking at the issues of job creation outside biodiversity. We need not to be looking at the issues of poverty outside biodiversity, because biodiversity has proven to almost cut across many sectors within the African economy. Wetlands, some of which are of international importance, cover some of 1% of Africa's total surface area. I'm talking about places like the Lake Chilwa in Malawi, and Lunganga Swamp in Zambia, and the St. Louis wetlands in South Africa. Wetlands are said to provide numerous ecosystem goods and services, including water regulations, fresh water supply, and nutrients which are necessary for agricultural production and food security. The other new and emerging challenge that Africa is faced with is the issue of energy. I think the last time I read a report, it was said that France consumes 50 times more energy than a single South African would. Or a person in France consumes 50% more energy than a single African would. And energy is a very big issue in Africa because our people do not have access to energy. Access to energy is essential for development and is critical for improving livelihoods. Energy is used for cooking, for production of goods and services, and for heating, lighting, and transportation. Access to energy also contributes to public service, such as refrigeration of drugs and improvement of services in schools. Access to energy also is important to facilitate development and distributes to meeting some of Africa's economic growth plans. Of the 1.4 billion people without access to electricity worldwide, 40% are in Africa. Those are shocking stats. And the role of energy in facilitating economic development through micro enterprises and livelihood activities such as locally owned businesses require energy. Economic development will create employment. So we need, so energy is very important to keep the economy in movement and to enhance the activity of the economy. Groundwater-based rural water supply requires energy for pumps. Energy also facilitates preparation of meals. Energy is key element of fully functioning health care centers. Almost the basic usages of energy, if you really look and analyze them, they are actually things that are basic human activities in Africa. I mean, you're talking about cooking, you're talking about water, pumping of water. These things are the basic human activities for Africa. So without energy, Africa's growth is really threatened. Time spent by women and girls on energy-related chores will be released if we have enough energy. We were speaking about the issue of inequality. So the issue of energy has proven to be a very critical challenge when it comes to Africa. The other issues, of course, without a brainer, is youth unemployment. Youth population in Africa steadily increased from just over 17% in the 1970s and about 20% in 2010. This population group forms a productive part of the labor force. It is also a driver of future economic growth. Countries have pursued education and skills development among the youth to equip them with and enable them to contribute effectively to the labor force. Sub-Saharan Africa, I've mentioned earlier on, is home to more than 1 billion people, and half of those people will be under 25 in the next, or should I say by the year 2050. And so the issue of youth development is a major issue that Africa is dealing with and that needs to deal with. And the causes really of youth unemployment is skills mismatches between the output of the education system and the needs of business, a shortage of decent work, right, in sub-regions, and the global economic crisis. Africa's increasing youth population is faced with challenging financial crisis. And we can go on and on to mention the reasons why unemployment is huge in Africa. So I'm going to pass on the issue of youth employment and get to the issue of biodiversity and mention most outstanding biodiversity needs and challenges, and then possible opportunities for benefiting in the biodiversity conservation. The most outstanding biodiversity needs and challenges since biodiversity almost cut across the economic growth is lack of resources and structure to manage protected areas, important and threatened and unprotected ecosystem or species, lack of government or scientific capacity to study and manage biodiversity, lack of public awareness, which is very important, or involvement in conservation. Now, the benefits, or rather opportunities that may arise is the issue of trust funds, financial contributions, in kind support to protect areas, support for creation of new protected areas, manage concession as protected areas, sponsor campaigns to protect ecosystems by using charismatic and endangered flagship species, support conservations, support for scientific research and analysis, support for technical capacity building and training, support for the managerial capacity building in government agencies, support for environmental education and awareness building, support for integrated conservation and development. And the other issue that is a challenge in Africa is the issue of water scarcity. Now, water scarcity is definitely linked to the environment, Africa is also home to major large rivers such as the Congo, Nile, Zambezi, and Niger, to major lakes such as Lakes Victoria. Africa is characterized by highly variable rainfalls, which results in uneven distribution of water resources. That is another problem, which is related to infrastructure. The number of those without access to clean water, to clean drinkable water, is still high in Africa, over 40% in sub-Saharan Africa. So the issue of infrastructure, the distribution, storage, access to water supply, and sanitation gap is all mixed up in water scarcity. There's an urgent need for innovative solutions for tackling water and climate change related challenges. These will lead to economic development and job opportunities, of course. The challenge is a lack of water-related skills and capacity, as well as widespread institutional fragmentations. Now, all these challenges for me also present opportunities, because wherever there's a challenge as an entrepreneur, you'll know that there's an opportunity involved. So as I mentioned the challenges, I'm equally thinking about the opportunities that they produce. And additionally, we need a new set of skills for a new approach in dealing with issues of water scarcity in Africa. The other issue will be the issue of food crisis in Africa. Food security is a long-standing issue in Africa. The continent needs to confront a set of new challenges, including competition for bioenergy, which is still limited but likely to grow, diminishing phosphorus supplies, cash and food crops for export, things like tea, palm oil, etc., versus local food security, trade-offs, addressing the newfound interest in forest. Earlier on, we spoke about forestry. There is also an urgent need to find ways of ensuring food supply in Africa, improving food processing, increasing investment in agriculture, increasing agricultural efficiency. Food pricing is also an issue. That increased dramatically as a result of drought in grain-producing countries, reduced yields. The increase in oil prices triggered an increase in transport and fertilizer. All these things, if you really analyze them properly, are interrelated. They're all linked to each other. And the last one that I want to talk about is climate change. We cannot talk about economic growth without touching the issue of climate change. The impact of climate change possesses serious threats to sustained economic growth, poverty reduction, and the quality of life in Africa. Most parts of the African continent are expected to experience reduced average annual rainfall and increased aridity and droughts. This, of course, has everything to do with drought in Africa influenced by climate change. The combination of reduced rainfall and hotter temperatures are expected to result in net drying and increased aridity and a greater proportion of the continent. Primary challenges concerning climate change adaptation is that of resources. So the issues that are causing us not to be able to deal with climate change is that we do not have the necessary resources, which also break down and link down to infrastructure. So it is necessary to build adaptable capacity, particularly for vulnerable people, and to ensure that climate resilience is mainstreamed into country development programs and their implementation plans. These are the issues that relate to policy also. The issues I've mentioned is funding. We don't have much funds. Climate change in Africa has been estimated at 2.2 to 30 billion per year over the next 10 years to 20 years. So with Africa not even having money, well, we do have money, but not having enough money to support people in terms of food security, and climate change is expected to cost us from 20 to 30 billion per year over the next 10 to 20 years. It's something that is really challenging. Also linked to climate change is desertification. The issues Africa, through climate change, of course, is now developing minor deserts in different parts of Africa. Desertification is one of the most serious challenges that impact sustainable development in Africa. It is closely linked to poverty and impacts health, food security, natural resources, and the environment. 2/3 of the continent is either deserts or drylands. Land degradation affects at least 485 million people, or 65% of the entire African population. So these are things that we should not take lightly, because they affect what we're trying to achieve as a young movement in Africa. The area of susceptible to land degradation and desertification is likely to increase as a result of the effects of climate change. Under a range of climate scenarios, it is projected that there will be an increase of 5 to 8% of acid and semi-arid lands in Africa. These, we cannot look at economic growth in Africa without looking at these issues, these minor issues, not minor, but few issues that I've mentioned. These are issues that I would like us to look into when we dealing with the issue of how we want to address a One Africa Forum initiatives. These are issues that I would like us to look at when we are in our, our domains of education, in our domains, in our own communities, because the idea of Africa does not start when we are in platforms such as these, or when we are in parliament. It starts in homes where we live, to the communities we serve, and then it does a ripple effect from inside out. So it's important then that we look at these issues, we prioritize these issues as issues of importance, because they are interlinked. We can't speak infrastructure development without speaking the issue of biodiversity losses. We can't speak the issue of biodiversity loss without speaking the issue of drought. So I'll pause my presentation here, and we'll probably allow questions or maybe an interaction with the colleagues on the platform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yamkela, for a very insightful session. You really went into depth on the issues and fundamental problems that we're facing here in Africa. I would actually like to open the platform for anyone who has questions or comments that you'd like to address. While you were speaking, sir, there was actually a question from Ms. Rabet. Let me just read it through while we wait for the other questions to come through. Oh, Ms. Rabet,
can we take Rabet's question?
Take the platform. You can actually ask your question, ma'am.
What was just Rebecca's question? And then so that you can attend to it.
The first question that you asked was, please explain the difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion.
Tax avoidance and tax evasion.
Yes. And can you kindly unmute her, sir?
Rebecca's hand is also up. So, Mr. Yamkela, you might You can take over the session. Just quickly respond to that one. The difference between
Participants are unmuted.
they're asking the difference between tax evasion.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. The idea, the issues of tax in relations to Africa and big corporates and tax avoidance or companies stealing money from Africa or illicit finances is, like I mentioned, a big issue in Africa. And many companies, what they do is they don't report. I'm just trying to break it down in its simplest form. Many companies don't report their true earnings, and they will take money out of the country illegally through, of course, their connections. Some of them will avoid paying tax through those systems. So there is a legal way of avoiding tax by giving back to society, which is done through CSIs, which is when companies support initiatives such as climate change, etc., where they give back to the community. But that is not even a fraction to what they steal out of Africa. Whether they are taking out hardcore cash, and literally, I remember there was a conference in Sandton where the former president of South Africa, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, was talking about that, where companies actually withdraw physical cash, or rather get physical cash and keep it away and stack it away, or take it out of the country, just to avoid being taxed. So there is a legal way of avoiding tax, which is supporting initiatives that relate to the growth of that country or that continent. And then there is an illegal way that they're also doing it, which is avoiding to pay tax and literally stealing money from Africa.
Okay. Is there any other questions, Mr. Blessing?
Thank you so much. Yes, there is, Ms. Rabetu. Would you still want to ask, or was that the question that you wanted to ask?
Yes, that was one of the questions that I wanted to ask. Thank you so much, Yamkela, for that presentation. It was really insightful, and I, for one, did not know the importance of biodiversity in Africa, and I think, that was something that, that really stood out for me. So thank you so much for all your insights and your inputs. So the question that I have is, I know that, I didn't hear the introduction properly, but I think you said you're the CEO or the director of SMME, something to do with SMMEs. So I wanted to ask that so obviously we've just gone through a pandemic, and a lot of SMMEs are still trying to recover. Others are closing down because they couldn't make enough cash flow during COVID. So I wanted to know if your company or your organization extends help to such SMMEs, and if so, how can they access the help, and any other suggestions that you have for SMMEs in general that can help them to be able to ride this COVID wave. And my second question relates to financial inclusion. So I've heard like the SARB, the Prudential Authority specifically, speaking about how they want, one of their focuses is financial inclusion. I mean, of course, this relates to South Africa now. But I also know that in Kenya, for example, the M-Pesa went a long way with assisting people with being banked and being able to transact amongst themselves. So I just want to ask, how important is financial inclusion for Africa? Not only in terms of banking the unbanked, but also people having access to credit or having access to facilities, and for them being able to participate in the economy. So yeah, for Africa generally, how important is financial inclusion, or is that something that we need to look at further down the line, and there are deeper issues that we need to focus on first before we look at financial inclusion? Thank you. Those are my two questions.
Yeah, I think you'll have to repeat the first one, but the second one I got it. The issue of financial inclusion in Africa is a no-brainer. I mean, many of Africans have been sidelined when it comes to financial inclusion. They don't have access to credit. They don't have access to collateral when they want to go borrow money in the banks. They don't have something that the bank can hold on because they don't have land. So the issue of land distribution also come into factor, and the issue of land that was taken from them. It's an interlinked crisis. But just to summarize it, government and small businesses are jointly responsible for creating a system that helps SMEs to get into the mainstream economy. Government and small businesses we need to create systems and programs that will allow us to be able to stand on our feet and not be disadvantaged because we do not have a good financial background. And for me, those systems can differ. I mean, we can play around with ideas where government puts up a fund, and I know some government in different countries have done those things, where government puts up a fund and that fund allows or rather it supports or serves as a collateral for the SME when they want to go borrow money in the bank. So financial inclusion is a key issue still amongst blacks, amongst SME black-owned companies in Africa, not only in South Africa. And there needs to be a drastic approach towards dealing with that. Your first question, please repeat it again.
Sorry, so my first question was, I just can't remember, I didn't hear the introduction properly about your role and your company. And yes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know.
Yeah. So the company focuses on creating, well, let me put it this way. There are two divisions in the company. There's a first division that focuses on high performance businesses. So these are businesses that are running lucrative operations, whether a product or service. We help them to be sustainable. We help them to increase their sales. Increasing sales means the growth of the business. Growth of the business means job creation. So these are high performance. These are businesses that we help to ride on the high performance zone. That's what we call it. So we help them to become high performance sustainable businesses. We help them look into 10 years of the economy to say in the next 10 years, where would you be? The idea is to help to create futuristic sustainable businesses. So not just a person who's thinking 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, think 10 years, 20 years ahead. So that's what we try to do through research that we provide them, through training that we provide them. We help them to build these kind of businesses so that at one stage they should not take from government the little resources that government has, but they should be sustainable on their own. And then the second one is the SMMEs, which is the small, medium, micro enterprises. Those are really guys within the ideation stage, guys that are still wishing to get into business or they've just started, but they don't know where to go for funding, they don't know where to go for business support, they don't know how to draft a business proposal, a business plan, they do not know how to pitch if they have to go pitch to investors. So we literally take them through the basic of business school. Like, what is a business? What must you look into? How do you build business systems? How do you pitch? Like I made an example. Who are the associations and structures within your sector that can help fund you? What is your sector looking like in the next 5 years? So the outlook is rather short than those SMEs, which are small, medium enterprises, where we look at 10 to 20 years. Yeah, I hope that I was able to answer your question.
My question was answered. I have a follow-up question, but I'll allow Blossom to let me ask it. If that's okay, can I ask it so that I don't hog the platform?
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of financial inclusion, I know for example, the big banks in South Africa they try to create accounts for people who don't earn a lot of income. So I just want to know that, do you think that the big banks can go a long way in assisting with curbing financial inclusion, or will they just increase the gap? And then also, would a bank that is owned by the South African Reserve Bank, for example, assist in helping with financial inclusion, or they just perpetrate corruption further? I know there was the Postnet Bank, the Post Office Bank, which didn't go very far. But yeah, I just want to know, do you think that a bank, a central bank, if they own a commercial bank, will that help with financial inclusion? And do you think that the big banks are doing enough to help, or if they try to do more, will that just increase the inequality gaps?
Okay, so the first thing is that banks.
The latest original automatic mechanical leather wristwatch. It is a Swiss design wristwatch. This watch.
So banks are businesses, and the bottom line of a business, as big as a bank, is to make money. So whatever they do, which they're supposed to do, is to create revenue, and that's rightfully so. So they will continue doing what they have to do, which is make money, and which is to prioritize money over anything else. We're not saying that banks don't create programs that support small, medium enterprises. They do, but just keep in mind that their core purpose is revenue, and therefore, if you don't forget that, then you understand why some things will not be achieved as quickly as we wish they will be achieved. Government also, through the Reserve Bank and interlinking it to institutions such as DFIs, which is CFAs and NEFs, etc. Even government is doing some sort of, running programs and initiatives that are geared to support small businesses. Some systems are not very effective, and that's a fact. Some systems, they help, but the majority, but for me, those systems are not. If a system that you create is to end hunger, and it only ends 20% hunger, then that system is not effective. So they've created these DFIs, which are state-owned entities designed to finance small businesses, but a majority of those businesses get rejected from those DFIs. For me, that's a problem. So we give credit to what they do, but looking at the bigger picture and the rate at which Africa has sunk, we don't have time for that kind of 20% effect. We need 80, 90% effect. I mean, you've got the resources, you've got the researchers within the departments, which you pay them with our taxpayers' money, with our money. So why are you not creating systems that are well researched to have a 90% impact to the funding that you're providing for small businesses? And why are there so many red tapes within that? So the solution for me is small businesses are a majority. We need to create our own financial system. We've got the power to do that. If we put together today 100 SMEs and they can open up their own bank, in the next 5 years, that bank will be effective and running. And that bank is purely designed to finance them as SMEs. So as much as there are structures that are there for both corporate and government to help, the bigger picture here for effective results is that we've got to come together as small businesses and devise and design something that works for us based on our own experiences, because we are the ones that are running these companies. We understand them better than a person who's sitting at CFA or NEF. I hope I did answer you.
Yes, you've answered me. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much once again, Mr. Yamkela. I would just like to add my own. Mr. former President Robert Mugabe actually said that the only warning that Africans take serious is low veg. And Mr. Yamkela just came through and told us the issues that we're really facing. Let this warning be something that we take very serious. With that said, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Mr. Walter. Thank you. Mr. Walter, can you hear me?